So we will look at the beginning of the Jewish people. And I'm going to make the argument to you that Israel and the Jewish identity are constructs of the imperial imagination. Okay? And this is hard to understand, so I'm going to explain it to you slowly. But the idea is that because of its geographic location, Israel has always been historically important. And as a result, different empires have tried to manipulate the identity of Israel to best promote their own agenda or policies. Okay? So I know this is a hard concept to understand, but we'll go for it slowly. And again, we're spending like the rest of the semester on this major thesis of ours. Okay, so now let's move on to Israel. Okay, we now know about the Persian Empire, how they managed their system and why they are so effective. Okay, now let's talk about Israel. So remember that we read the Bible, and the Bible came about because David needed to legitimize his rule. And after the Bronze Age collapsed, David created a Davidic kingdom in the Levant because Egypt, Anatolia, Mesopotamia were preoccupied, right? But because the Levant is so important, this Davidic kingdom doesn't really last that long. It lasts for like 80 to 100 years, okay? After Solomon, David's son, dies, Israel is divided into two parts. The northern kingdom, which gets conquered by Assyria, as well as Judah, okay, Jerusalem, which tries to maintain the Davidic kingdom, but doesn't last very long. At this time in history, the Israelites are being pulled in different directions, okay? The Anatolians, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Egyptians, because they are strategically very important. And so what's really hard for these empires is, how do we maintain control over Jerusalem? Okay, and they try different techniques. They try burning down their city centers, okay? So the northern kingdom was destroyed. You might have heard of the 10 lost tribes of Israel. They tried taking hostages, okay? But because this region is so volatile, nothing really works. And so the Jerusalem, the Israelites keep on rebelling. Okay? So this is the kingdom of Judah. And what happens is, for the longest time, the Babylonians are trying to deal with the Israelites. Okay, so they take hostages. Okay, they take hostages, like thousands of them, and move them to Babylon, where they become scribes, where they become farmers, where they become merchants. Okay, but again, the region is so strategically important that Jerusalem, the Israelites, they switch loyalties all the time. Eventually, the Babylonians are so pissed off that they decide to burn down their temple. Okay. And so, at this point in history, the Israelites are now gone. Okay, does that make sense? The Israelites are gone now. 587 to 6, we don't know when, but Babylonians destroyed Jerusalem because they cannot, they tried many techniques to try to control Jerusalem. They can't do it. The Israelites are too rebellious. But it's too strategically important, so they destroy. So they decide, you know what, screw this. We'll just destroy the city. Okay. So when this happens, okay, this is really important to understand. The Israelites are gone. Okay. The people are still around, but the identity of the Israelites are now gone. 539, Cyrus the Great conquers Babylon. Okay, and he says, "I want the Israelites to return to Jerusalem." It's called the Edict of Cyrus, all right? And this is celebrated in the Bible. What is controversial is, why would he do such a thing, okay? Because again, the Israelites are now gone. The Israelites who went to Babylonia, they may still keep their religion a bit, but they no longer have their land. They have changed as a people, okay? So as an Israelite, you pray in the temple, but the temple is now destroyed, so now you pray in the synagogue, okay? So the people have changed a great deal. So the question now is, why would Cyrus the Great go to Babylon and say, you know what, I want you Israelites to return to Jerusalem. I want you to reconstitute the nation of Israel. Why would he do that? Okay, so this is going to be a debate that will never ever end, okay? So the Bible tells us that Cyrus the Great did this because God told him to do that. Really simple. God says, I love my people, the Israelites, send them home. Okay, and Cyrus the Great says, yes, of course, you're the great God, I'll do so, okay? Guys, that's how it happened, okay? All right, so there are different explanations. Maybe the idea is that Cyrus wants to show all the Persian Empire, I'm religiously tolerant. You can practice your religion, you can celebrate your religion. That's what the Persian Empire is, an open, tolerant, generous empire, okay? That's true. What's also true is that Cyrus found himself as a righteous and merciful king who wanted to be generous to everyone, okay? So he saw the Israelites want to home, and he says, well, go home, okay? It's also possible that there's a faction within the Israelites who supported his Babylon takeover, okay? I don't know if this is true, it's probably not true, but we consider that as a possibility. That the Israelites in Babylon supported his takeover, and so to thank them, Cyrus said, fine, I'll give you back Jerusalem. Another possibility is that when Cyrus the Great conquered Babylon, he discovered that, you know what, these Israelites are really good administrators. And this is true throughout history because remember, the Israelites have their Bible, and their religion requires them to study the Bible. And as we discussed, the Bible is one of debate, openness, asking questions. And so these are very literate intellectuals. And they rise up very high in the Babylon administration. But this is true throughout history where Jewish people will rise very high in all empires, including the Islamic Empire, including the American Empire, okay? I think the best reason for what happened is divide and rule, okay? So the idea is that you need to control the Levant. Because the Levant gives you access to Egypt, which is historically the wealthiest part of the world, okay? Whoever controls Egypt controls the world. So what you do is you set up a group of people in the Levant that are only loyal to you. Okay, does that make sense? Okay? You set up people in the Levant that only exist because you, the empire, allow them to exist. If you, the empire, did not support them, then the locals, everyone in that region would get rid of them right away, okay? And that's why we have the Jews. So the Jews were invented by the Persians to control the Levant. The Jews is actually a Persian term, okay? So before the Jews were, of course, the Israelites. Now we have the Jews. All right, so this is Jerusalem. And as you can see, what's really important to understand is that this is actually only a really small part of the Levant. But this part is specifically for the Jews. And it's part of this Persian province called Beyond the River. Okay? And they call it the province of Yahu. That's why we have the term Jews, okay? Because they are part of the province of Yahu. And what's really important to understand is they're surrounded by enemies. The Sumerians are Israelites who have stayed in the Levant. Okay, do you understand? So most people around them are in fact Israelites who adapted to local circumstances. And that means that they practice different religions. That also means that they married foreign women as well. But they still consider themselves as Israelites, okay? Right? Does that make sense, guys? So, what happens is that these exiles from Babylon, they come back and they say, no, we're the true Israelites. You guys are the false Israelites. The reason why we're true is we have stayed loyal to our religion. Okay? So what's going to happen over the next few decades is almost a civil war between Israelites who've stayed and Israelites who left but come back. All right? And this is what the Persian Empire wants in order to maintain stability in the Levant. Right? Because you have this small minority of exiles from Babylon who've come back and they're in conflict with everyone else. All right? This is divide and rule. So these are my three predictions. First of all, they're going to rebuild the Temple of Solomon. Okay? They're going to build the third temple by destroying the Al-Aqsa Mosque. They're going to do that sooner or later. Okay? That's the first thing they're going to do. And you know why? Because when we read the Bible, you can see how happy they were. Okay? Because they felt completed. They felt as though God is with us, God has forgiven us, God loves us. Okay, so building the third temple is crucial to the identity of Israel today. Okay, so they're going to do this, and it's going to cause a lot of problems because, again, the Al-Aqsa Mosque is the third holiest site in the Islamic world. And it's going to create a lot of conflict between Israel and the Islamic world. Okay, do they care? Not really. Okay, number two, you can see how when the Jews returned, they were convinced that they were forced out of Jerusalem because they offended God, okay? So in other words, if Jews want to maintain control over Israel, they need to obey the laws of God, which means that they become a theocracy, okay? Now I'm not sure if you've been to Israel. I've been to Israel. And if you go to a place like Tel Aviv, it's a very open, liberal, cosmopolitan, forward-looking place, okay? I think that Tel Aviv has one of the world's highest concentrations of gays in the world, okay? Guess what? That's gone, okay? As Israel develops over time, it's become more and more of a theocracy, where the Bible is the law, okay? And the third thing is that we can expect that as the Pax Judaica expands, more and more Jews will return to Israel. Look, the reality is this. If you look at the Middle East, Israel is the greatest power in the Middle East. There's no force in the Middle East that can prevent Israel from expanding, including the Pax Judaica, which is their ambition, okay? So this is just an introduction. But the thing I want you guys to remember is that, first of all, the Jewish identity, it is fluid, it's flexible, it's open. It was created by empire for the purpose of maintaining empire. Okay? And we're going to see this throughout history as well. All right? So, was this clear to you guys? Are there any questions about today? Okay, yeah?
So how does the Persian state control, like Persian control of Jerusalem, transfer to modern day society? Like, how does it still work? Because I think we're seeing like a trend that Israel's going kind of more back to like depending on the Bible and everything. So how does it like transfer to modern day society and all the conflicts that's happening?
Okay, so Persia wanted to divide and conquer the Levant, okay? They're afraid that if the Levant becomes too stable, the Levant might settle with Egypt or another power, and they lose control of the Levant, which directly impacts their capacity to trade and control the world, okay? So the way you control the Levant is you create this entity that is conflict with everyone else. And now what happens is that both this entity, Jerusalem, and its enemies rely on you, Persia, to manage the conflict. Okay? And this is what's happening today in Israel because who's the empire? America's the empire, right? Israel has all these conflicts with nations in the Middle East, right? They have conflicts with Turkey, they have conflicts with Egypt, they have conflicts with the Gulf nations, they have conflicts with basically everyone, okay? So who does everyone need to manage this conflict? America, right? Saudi Arabia, Israel, Turkey, Egypt, they all require the United States to come in and say, hey guys, let's just get along. We're just one big family, okay? This is all intentional in order for America to maintain dominance over the Middle East. Who's very unhappy about this? Which nation is very unhappy about this? Israel, okay? Right? Israel's gonna piss about this. So we can expect that over time what's gonna happen is a major conflict between America and Israel. There's gonna be a divorce, basically. And my argument to you is that Israel will win this conflict, and as a result, Israel will become the dominant power in the Middle East. Because the Jews know their own history. The Jews read the Bible every day. They know what the Persians did. They know what the British did. They know what the Americans are doing today. They don't want this. They don't want to become a servant, a slave to empire. They are a servant and slave to their God, but they don't become a servant and slave to the empire. So they need to get rid of the empire and establish their sovereignty. Okay, and that's why there's so much conflict in the Middle East today, because Israel needs to figure out how to get rid of the American Empire so that they can be independent and fully achieve their sovereignty. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think one question I have is about, like, I think currently the Jews stop attacking Palestinians?
Okay, guys, okay. This is really important, okay? Don't say the Jews, okay? There are different groups. There's the Israelites. The Israelites are the time of King David. They're gone, okay? Let's forget about the Israelites. There are the Jews, and the Jews are people who practice Judaism, okay? Then there are the Israelis. Israelis are citizens of the nation of Israel. It's the Israelis that are doing this, not the Jews. There's a difference, okay? Because the Jews are spread out throughout the world, okay? What we call the Jewish diaspora. And there are a lot of Jews in the world who oppose the nation of Israel because, well, what the nation of Israel is doing, they believe goes against the will of God, okay? So Israelis, not Jews, okay?
Okay, so the Israelis is, I think, like, the news just disappears about how Israelis attacks Palestine. It's just because previously it was like all on the hot searches, but recently it's just gone, the news is.
Okay, look, the reality is that if you read the Bible, it's clear what's going to happen. Israel is going to clear the West Bank and Gaza of Palestinians to establish their theocratic state. Okay, they can't have Palestinians and Arabs around. It has to be completely Jewish. And these Palestinians can be moved elsewhere, to Jordan, to Egypt. They don't really care. Okay, but this process will take time. Okay? All right. Any more questions, guys?